bright sunny spring day greeted spectators at AA Kyalami for round 5 of Super Series 98, South Africa's homegrown stadium off-road series for bikes, quads and cars. The championship situation in almost all the categories was very tenuous for the points leaders, and with up to 90 points available in some of those, nobody could afford to take things easy. In the clubman's motorcycle category, the top 4 were separated by a mere 20 points. But in this class, aimed at the non-works and weekend riders, anything could happen to upset the apple cart. We pick up the action on the 3rd lap. Bruce van der Merwe on his Honda leading Jaco du Toit on his Kawasaki, involved in a furious battle for the lead. Du Toit had not scored in the first 2 events of the year, but since taking up the challenge here at AA Kyalami in May, he's been a harrowing thorn in the sides of the top runners. Van der Merwe had also not scored in the first event of the series, but has since then taken 2 overall victories and 1 second position, and was in no mood to be challenged by Du Toit, as he needed maximum points to close the championship gap between himself and points leader Clayton Duckworth. Duckworth was at this point languishing down the field. The battle for 3rd position was as intriguing as the one for the lead, with Malcolm Furness on another Honda leading Gareth Massane on his Kawasaki, the two being followed by a whole bunch of riders hungry to improve upon their positions. With Van der Merwe and Du Toit keeping each other very busy, the following pack could close in. But it wasn't plain sailing for them either, as Furness and Massane battled for position, allowing championship leader Clayton Duckworth on his CE off-road motorcycles Kawasaki to also become part of the picture. Van der Merwe seemed to have the upper hand along the straights, with Du Toit catching him in the twisty bits. Du Toit was on a 200cc machine, so he didn't have the raw power that Van der Merwe had available. But the heavier 250 Honda of Van der Merwe wasn't as nifty through the tight corners. It was quite obvious that this battle would be resolved by fitness and skill, as there was virtually nothing to choose from between the 2 top runners. Du Toit was in his best position of the year and was determined to get his first victory. Du Toit took the outside line out of the tight right-hander, but Van der Merwe held his line, forcing Du Toit wide, and the Kawasaki rider lost control. Fortunately, he could rejoin the race, but there wasn't enough time left for him to get back in a challenging position. This left Van der Merwe alone up front, while Malcolm Furness had also opened up a gap over Duckworth, Massane and Paul Richardson on a Kawasaki. In the battle for 7th, Dion van Rensburg and Warren Todd, both on Hondas, were both not giving an inch. But nobody could stop Bruce van der Merwe, while Massane moved past Furness and Richardson past championship leader Clayton Duckworth. Jaco du Toit did well to finish 8th.
No, my bike was riding very well, and the track was also, the preparations were done very well as well. And so you could choose lines wherever you're riding. You could just choose lines and just go for it, and it was very smooth.
In the class for super quads, only 27 points separated Evan Hutchison from 3rd place Graham Love, while Clayton Du Plessis was a real threat to the championship leader.
We've won most of the races this year. It only gives us about an 18-point lead over the guy in 2nd. Unfortunately, should we have any kind of problem in one of the heats, that puts you right out of the running. So you've got to stay competitive, and we have to keep consistent up there with 1st and 2nd. There's no room for any mistakes.
The start of the first race for the super quads, all the riders on identical Yamaha Banshee machines with 200cc engines. The first corner in this type of racing is always a hectic affair, but this time everybody got through safely. It was a great start for Henk Swart, opening up a gap over Hutchison on a Linex Royal Purple Yamaha, and Graham Love riding under the Joburg Yamaha banner. Love was hassling Hutchison for the 2nd spot, but out of the tight right-hander and along the downhill straight to the bottom end of the newly laid out circuit, Hutchison started pulling a gap and chasing Swart in the lead. The dusty conditions were something else the riders had to contend with. The top 3 had by now started to open a bit of a lead over the rest of the pack, with personal battles developed over the season resumed down the field. Hutchison had been dominating the season so far, finishing 1st overall in all the previous 4 rounds. Clayton Du Plessis was the man usually chasing Hutchison, but Swart was threatening to upset the established order. The intricate scoring system, applied to all the categories in Super Series 98, allows for a maximum of 25 points to be scored in each of the 3 races on the day, depending on the number of entries. Swart was coming under tremendous pressure from Hutchison, but when the second-place rider tried to go around the outside at the bottom of the circuit, he went wide, allowing Love to close in and challenge for second place. Swart had suddenly burst onto the quad scene at Tarleton in August and was being ultra careful not to make any mistakes, knowing that if he could hold on, he'd be able to score his best result to date. But Hutchison knew that he couldn't afford to drop behind, keeping up the pressure to try and force Swart into a mistake. With so little difference between the performance and handling of these stock standard machines, it was down to rider skill, and there was also absolutely nothing between the top 3, although Swart did have the luxury of choosing the best lines through the corners. Hutchison now seemed to have shaken off Love and had Swart firmly at his sights. With the throttles wide open, they charged up the return straight, neck and neck in front of the main grandstand. But Swart did the clever thing, knowing that the only way that Hutchison would be able to get past would be to go around the outside, and the race leader made sure that he kept to the inside. But coming out of the left-hander, it seemed as if Swart suddenly slowed, handing the lead to championship leader Evan Hutchison, who immediately started to pull away. He knew that having as many riders as possible between himself and Duplessis, he'd be able to open up his points lead even further. But with the various battles going on for the minor placings, all eyes were now on Clayton Duplessis, who'd started to carve his way through the field and was catching Hutchison.
Really is a double-double as I come to the end and slows them right down, and you've got to...
On lap 6 now, and Duplessis had moved up to 3rd, hassling Gianni Giannocaro in the battle for 2nd position. Both Love and early race leader Henk Swart had started to drop back as the race progressed. Duplessis had very little trouble moving past Giannocaro and into 2nd. He might have had little trouble passing Giannocaro, but it didn't seem as easy for Duplessis to get away from him, as Giannocaro grimly stayed glued to his backside.
Position number 86. Brendan Barton.
But going down the hill and into the fast left-hander at the bottom, Giannocaro outbraked himself and slid wide, allowing Duplessis to get away and Brendan Badenhorst to close in. The battle for 5th was raging between Henk Swart, Ricky Giannocaro and Graham Love. But at the front of the field, championship leader Evan Hutchison had cleared a substantial lead. The race had settled down into a pattern, as his teammate and biggest threat this season, Clayton Duplessis, had also opened a lead over Gianni Giannocaro, who seemed to be safely in 3rd ahead of Brendan Badenhorst. And that's the way they remained, with Hutchison clearing off into the distance. Duplessis did well to come up through the field and keep his championship hopes alive. Back to the motorcycles, and in the 200 category, 42 points separated Freddie Fourie and Rian van Niekerk, but there was virtually nothing between van Niekerk and the next 5.
Yeah, Rian has gone overseas for the designations. I think my chances were pretty good. I felt very good out there. I got good lines. I just have to see if I'll still be good in the races, because all the sand's moving outside to the outside.
In this category, there's very little to choose between the individual bikes, as nobody had substantially more power than anyone else. So once again, it'd be down to riding and racing skills on the track. Another clean start, with the redesigned circuit allowing the riders to move freely through the first corner. Ian Topless on his Elf Suzuki took the lead from Wayne Smith on his Honda, and Jared Diager on another Honda. But Smith came unstuck in the fast left-hander and rejoined way down the field. Topless now led Diager and Leonard Peterson on his Elna Fox Kawasaki, and the trio was starting to get away as the rest of the field sorted themselves out. The battle for 4th was hotting up as Neville Bradshaw on his Suzuki was trying to hold off the Elna Fox Kawasaki trio of Brett Gray, Petrus van Vuren and championship leader Freddie Fourie. Topless and Diago were in a league of their own this early in the race, with Peterson also getting away from the battle for 4th. Fourie was acutely aware of the fact that he needed to get past this bunch and to start challenging for the lead if he didn't want his points lead to be whittled away. At the front, though, Topless was exactly where he wanted to be. A mistake by Diager in the tight left-hander gave Topless a bit of breathing space and also allowed Peterson to get closer. The chasing pack also closed in. Wayne Smith had recovered well after his first lap tumble and was part of this group, now in 9th position. Topless was reveling in the lead, opening up that gap over De Jager, but the action was behind this pair as Peterson was coming under increasing pressure from Gray, Fourie and Van Vuren. Fourie elected to take the longer but faster way around the bottom corner, hoping to get better drive out of it. Topless, a reigning double motocross champion, was in a determined mood, opening the gap between himself and De Jager in the early part of the race. On lap 7, and De Jager had been driving a great race as he closed the gap to Topless, pressurizing the more experienced Suzuki rider through every corner. Having lapped some of the back markers, behind them came Fourie, Gray and a hard-charging Smith, now up to 5th on his Honda. Topless knew that he had a race on his hands as De Jager kept on pushing hard, but the race leader isn't the kind of guy who would easily crumble under pressure. This was the final lap and Wayne Smith was challenging Gray for 4th, but unbelievably he got it wrong at exactly the same spot. Fortunately for him, he lost only 1 place, dropping down to 6th as he rejoined. While at the front, this fascinating battle between Topless and De Jager was coming to a head. A great move by the Honda rider took him into the lead. The pair opened their throttles wide, neither of them willing to give an inch in a battle of wills so typical of Super Series racing. De Jager had timed it perfectly and held a slight lead coming over the tabletop in front of the grandstand, the two taking the checkered flag almost abreast. A fine race by both De Jager and Topless, with the Honda rider taking his first victory of the season. Smith eventually finished 5th, ahead of Peterson and Petrus and Rian van Niekerk.
For that last lap at the bottom corner, I thought, you know, we got him almost once the lap before and maybe tried again, so I ran it wide. He came in on the inside and he had to go wide because he ran it too hard, and I cut on the inside and passed him.